Info factory track for CSI WIP Move. Factory track has several WIP Move parameters to control the validations, displayed fields and processing options that are permitted as part of the WIP Move process. These are defined on the transaction set parameters form for the WIP Move transaction name. For this training, we have enabled all the parameters in order to show where those fields appear in the transaction steps. To start the WIP Move process, from the Factory Track Warehouse Mobility main menu, click on the Make It icon. This navigates to the production screen where you click on the WIP Move icon. To record a WIP move on a non-lot, non-serial item, enter or search and select from the warehouse list for the warehouse ID where the items are located. This can also be defaulted to the user's warehouse based on configuration settings on the user form. Enter or search and select the job ID on which you are recording the WIP move. Enter or search and select the job suffix ID. Note that Factory Track defaults this to 0. Enter or search and select the operation ID. Note that Factory Track defaults this to the last operation. If a reject quantity is provided, the reject reason code is displayed and it is required to perform the WIP move transaction. Note that a default reason code appears if configured on the transaction set maintenance form. Once the job ID and suffix are provided, the job item ID and description are displayed, as well as the open quantity. We can enter the completed quantity, the move quantity, the reject quantity. If configured for entry in transaction set maintenance parameters, the complete operation is displayed. Enter or select from drop-down if the operation should be marked as complete. Note that once complete, no other transactions can be logged against this operation. Click on the Move button to continue. Note that if this is being reported against the last operation for a job, a Next button is displayed instead of Move. When recording job move transactions against the last operation of a job, an additional screen is displayed before processing the move. Factory Track redisplays the previously entered data for the warehouse, job, item, quantity, and cross-reference ID. We can then enter or search and select the location ID to which the items are to be moved. This is defaulted based on the item's ranking or based on the location default defined on the transaction set maintenance form. If the global parameters have been set to support containers in use, then additional fields are used as follows. Indicate whether the items are to be placed into a container. If yes is selected, then enter or search and select the container ID to be used. Note that the location ID is disabled for entry in this case. If configured for entry in transaction set maintenance parameters, the closed job field is displayed. Enter or select from the drop-down if the job should be marked as closed. Note that once closed, no other transactions can be logged against this job. Click on the Move button to continue, or click back to go back to the previous screen. Note that if the Allow Cross-Docking parameter is enabled on the transaction set maintenance form, Factory Track determines if there are any active jobs, orders, etc. that require this item. If so, Factory Track presents the option to proceed with the cross-docking transaction. Note that if label printing is enabled, the standard label printing form is also provided. To record a WIP move on a lot tracked item, a similar process with additional lot-specific fields is used. After completing the initial entry form, Factory Track checks if this is reporting against the last operation. If so, the Next button is displayed. If not, the Move button is displayed to process the move to the next operation. For last operations, the same secondary form is presented as the non-lot, non-serial process. However, the lot ID field is enabled. We can enter, select or search the lot ID or tab out of the field, and Factory Track will then determine this value based on the defined format generation. As discussed, the toContainer field is enabled if the global parameters are set to use containers, and if selected, it requires entry of a container ID. We can enter or search and select the location ID to which the items are to be moved. This is defaulted based on the item's ranking or based on the location default defined on the transaction set maintenance form. If configured for entry in transaction set maintenance parameters, the closed job field is displayed. We then click on the Move button to process. Similarly to the previous non-lot, non-serial example, the Allow Cross-Docking and Label Printing processes are presented if enabled by transaction set maintenance. To record a WIP move on a serial tracked item. A similar process with additional serial specific fields is also used. After completing the initial entry form, FactoryTrack checks if this is reporting against the last operation. If so, the next button is displayed. If not, the move button is displayed to process the move to the next operation. For last operations, the same secondary form is presented as the non-lot, non-serial process. This screen behaves in the same manner as the standard and lot item process. However, there is an additional set for serial items. Note that instead of move button being displayed, the next button is available. The serial definition screen is presented, and the user has two methods available. One, the auto generation of serials, or two, manual assignment. If yes is selected for the generate serials field, then the process button becomes enabled to allow for completion of the process, and the serials are generated as part of the process request. For manual assignment, the scan field is displayed to indicate how many serials have been captured in the process so far. We then enter, scan, or search and select the serial number to be assigned. Note that the search and select option displays predefined serials available. When the scan quantity and the quantity required are equal, FactoryTrack then presents the processing options. Click on the Process button to complete the move transaction. Click on the Back button to go back to the previous screen. Click on the Show List button to display the captured serials, or the Clear List button to clear all the captured serials.